Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about blue-white spirits, and not just talk about blue-white spirits, we are going to do a deep dive into the blue-white spirits deck in Pioneer. I'm going to do a deck tech of the deck, I'm going to explain the deck, the card choices, what we're trying to do with the deck, how the deck is played. I'm going to show you what I would consider the stock build and what I'm playing, any flex slots that people have been toying with, and then how to sideboard against the decks that I consider playable in Pioneer, rather than just the top 10 decks like I normally do in my sideboard guides. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So this is Blue-White Spirits. It is probably the premier tempo deck in Pioneer, where the point of the deck is to play a spirit, sometimes at instant speed, be drawing cards, countering their spells, and just attacking them down and whittling away at them with mostly unblockable creatures. Now, because this is a tempo deck, it's really important we have lands that come in untapped. So we have our shock lands, we have our pain lands, we have the pathways, Seacrum Coasts. All of our lands come in untapped in the first 3 turns, which is essential in these tempo decks. So I'm going to rearrange the deck just a little bit to kind of talk about each part of the deck. So give me one sec. So the categories that I put this deck into are card advantage, raw power, creature interruption of our opponent, and spell interruption of our opponent. Because again, we're trying to put power onto the battlefield and interrupt what our opponent is doing when we play the Spirits deck. So let's just go from left to right. We're playing Spectral Sailor. It's a 1/1 for 1 with flash and flying. It's a spirit, and you can pay 4 mana and draw a card. The reason this card is good, and one of the reasons Mausoleum Wanderer is good, is being able to play this on turn 1 and then be attacking on turn 2 with Curious Obsession. Curious Obsession is an aura where it says enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and as whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with a creature this turn, you sacrifice Curious Obsession. And if you play one of these 1 mana cards and then connect with Curious Obsession the following turn, now you're getting raw card advantage, and you're more likely to draw into cards that you can protect the card that you're getting card advantage with. Especially if you have Curious Obsession on a spirit, Geistlight Snare is a mana leak for 1 mana, which is just disgusting and ridiculous, especially in conjunction with all of the other ways to protect our spirit with Curious Obsession on it. Spectral Sailor is also very good in the deep late game, being able to be a mana dump, right? You know, you're burnt out somehow, you know, being able to play 4 mana and drawing a card is already just like very, very strong. So that's our card advantage engines, and card advantage is extremely important in tempo, because we're kind of just trying to stop what our opponents are doing and be able to get in for enough to be able to kill them in time. So let's move on to these raw power cards. So we're playing Supreme Phantom. It is a lord for 2 mana. There's other lords you can play for 3 and 4 mana that just are proving to not be good enough for the deck. But we're still good enough for Supreme Phantom. Being 3 toughness means it doesn't die to like Bone Crusher Giant and stuff like that. And it's a huge surprise when you're like playing creatures, like slowly getting card advantage, sort of stopping what your opponent's doing, like counterspell, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden Supreme Phantom, all my stuff's unblockable because it's flying, jam, you die, is very good. Supreme Phantom pumping up Mausoleum Wanderer even farther makes so Mausoleum Wanderer can counter more spells and stuff like that, but we'll get to that when we talk about Mausoleum Wanderer. I was playing a 1 of Catilda with a secondary board. This is really good for like races and things like that, but it is definitely a raw power. Once we're already going wide, we're able to play Catilda, and it's just huge. And then if Catilda dies, being able to bring it back on one of our spirits, you know, just kind of means we just have 2 Catilda, which is just disgusting. It's a star for 3 mana. Flying lifelink protection from vampires, which is relevant with Bloodtide Harvester. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. So it counts for Curious Obsession, counts for all our spirits. It's just very, 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 very strong. Just ends up being a huge person. And you can bring it back for 5 mana on its flip side to be an enchantment that gives all of the text of Catilda, which is really disgusting. And then so now for our interruption cards. And I'll start with the least disruptive interruption card, but Shacklegeist. Shacklegeist is a 2/2 for 2. With flying, can only block creatures with flying. However, if you tap 2 untapped spirits you control, tap target creature you don't control. So something to understand about Shacklegeist is it doesn't have to tap for its ability. You can tap other spirits, even spirits that are summoning sick, because it's Shacklegeist's ability, they are not activating their own ability by tapping. And you can tap Shacklegeist while it's summoning sick to activate that ability. There's some cool stuff you can do. Mostly this is used as like deterrence while you're just kind of nickel and diming in the air. You know, you're able to tap a homie down, you know, with a spirit you just played or something like that. Jam with the rest of your spirits, tap their big homie down, jam with the rest of their spirits. That's like the normal way Shacklegeist is played. But you can also do some kind of cute stuff where like on their upkeep, you can tap their mana dork if you're to choke them on mana and things like that. Shacklegeist is very, very strong. A lot of play with this card. Mausoleum Wanderer, which we've mentioned a few times, is a 1/1 for 1. Whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under your control, Mausoleum Wanderer gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And you can sacrifice Mausoleum Wanderer to counter target instant or sorcery spell until its controller pays X. where X is Mausoleum Wanderer's power. So getting Mausoleum Wanderer's power up is really powerful. It's very good alongside cards like Rattle Change, where you play things at instant speed or Spectre Sailor and pump Mausoleum Wanderer up to a higher power to be able to kind of surprise counter something. Mausoleum Wanderer is also really good in the same sense that Spectre Sailor is, where we play it on turn 1, Curious Obsession on turn 2, and then just get a ton of value off of it. Rattle Chains is one of the backbones of the deck, in my opinion, is a 2-mana 2/1 with Flash and Flying. When Rattle Chains enters the battlefield, target spirit gains hexproof until end of turn, and you can cast spirit spells as low they had Flash. So it's a Flash Flying Spirit, so you can already great because we get to leave like counter spells up while we're leaving Rattle Chains up and things like that. It stops removal, right? Have a spirit gain hexproof, and having other spirits gaining Flash means that we can kind of surprise them with power. We can surprise them with Shacklegeist. We can surprise them with Supreme Phantoms in combat and stuff like that. And giving other spirits Flash just increases the power level of the deck incredibly dramatically. We're playing Spell Queller. This is the big reason for the white splash, but also sideboard cards, as you can see. Is a 3-mana 2/3 with Flash Flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile target spell with mana value 4 or less. And when Spell Queller leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner may cast the card without paying its mana cost. Something that's really important about Spell Queller, especially if you're playing in paper and need to resolve this correctly. These are 2 separate triggers. So if Spell Queller dies before it exiles the spell on the stack is exiled forever. Because when Spell Queller leaves the battlefield trigger happens, there is nothing exiled with Spell Queller if it dies while the spell is still in the stack. And then Spell Queller's first ability resolves, exiling the spell, but now there's no Spell Queller to die so that the spell can come back. It's a really important part of that. They don't really word cards like that anymore, but there's a couple cards that are worded similar to that. Skyclave Apparition is another one, being 2 separate triggers. But that's important to know, especially if you're trying to resolve it in paper. And now we're talking about non-creature Interruption. We have playing 2 Slip Out the Backs to kind of protect our creatures. Very, very, very good in conjunction with these 1-drops and like Curious Obsession and stuff like that. Being able to just go like 1-drop, Curious Obsession, have a 2nd mana. They try to remove it when I attack. I Slip Out the Back it. We get to stop their thing and be able to pump up our guy and be able to have like Curious Obsession still and all that stuff. Very, very strong. Lofty Denial is 2-mana counter target spell unless the controller plays 1. However, if you control a creature with flying, which we 100% do, almost 100% of the time, pay 4 instead. So it's just counter magic. And Geistlight Snare is a 3-mana instant. This spell costs 1 less if you control a spirit, which is very easy to do, and 1 less if you control an enchantment, which is reasonably easy to do. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 3. So sometimes it's a 1-mana mana leak, which is just disgusting. And so to go over what exactly we're trying to do with this deck is we are trying to play creatures. The creatures might not be hyper powerful, but we're trying to play creatures, interrupt what our opponent is doing, jam in the air, stop removal, counter your threat, Supreme Phantom, kill you. Like that's the goal of the deck. Be nickel and diming in the air while we're stopping our opponent from executing their strategy. It is so good when that happens. So good. The sideboard is pretty straightforward. Portable Hole is for, permanents that we're worried about that cost 2 or less for aggro matchups and things like that. Very good against mono green. Destroy Evil for enchantments or like Shieldrids and things like that. Invasion of Gobakon, because this is an tempo deck, aggro deck, I'm mostly only deciding Invasion of Gobakon against like board wipey decks. Things like Brotherhood End or Supreme Verdict or combo decks like Lotus. Takasia's Welcome is kind of Wedding Announcement number 5, but Wedding Announcement is a 3-mana enchantment at our end step. If it gets an invitation counter, if I attack with 2 or more creatures this turn, draw a card, otherwise create a 1/1 white human creature token. If it has 3 or more invitation counters on it, it flips, so where creatures get +1/+1. So it's basically just like a ton of fuel for the deck, and being able to create a lot of creatures, being able to create a lot of cards in my hand to be able to counter their stuff. And then Takasia's Welcome, 3 mana. Whenever one of our creatures, mana value 3 or less, enters the battlefield near your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, which is actually really dope because we can play at flash instant speed very easily. So we just play something during our turn, draw a card, pass the turn, play Rattle Chains, draw a card. It's just like really, really cool because it's different turns. But these almost always come in together, and therefore these big, long, grindy matchups, like they just accrue a lot of value. And if we're worried about them just kind of stopping us from doing our thing, and we need to accrue that value, we side in Takasia's Welcome, things like red, black, and stuff like that. Catilda, I've already talked about in the main deck, but is mostly for these like races or like it's really important that my guy is bigger than yours. And then we're playing 2 Skyclave Apparitions. Again, 2 separate triggers, just like Spell Queller. So if they kill it while the trigger's on the stack, the thing never comes back, or the spirit never happens. 3 mana 2/2, enters the battlefield, exile non-land, non-token permanent you control mana value 4 or less. When it leaves the battlefield, the exile card's owner creates a XX blue illusion creature token where X is the mana value of the exiled card. So this is spirit. Notably, it doesn't have flying, so it's important to mention. But it's just extra removal for permanents that cost 4 or less that we're worried about. Now, what's important to understand is that this deck has more or less been pretty figured out. This is pretty close to stock, but essentially there are 2 flex slots in the main deck and 2 flex slots in our sideboard. So let's look at the flex slots. So these are the blue-white spirits flex slots. In our main deck, we effectively select 2 of these in any combination. Shacklegeist, if mostly just like really good against mono green, but if you're worried about like creature decks or big dumb guys, Lofty Denial for more interruption, or if we're worried about board wipes or combo decks, we play Invasion of Gobakhan. I go with Shacklegeist and Lofty Denial because Invasion of Gobakhan can be really bad in a lot of situations, and these are good in more situations. But the stock list has 2 flex slots where you pick any 2 of these. And then these are all the possible sideboard cards. So there's 2 kind of slots you can take out in the sideboard. The 2 slots I'm not playing out of all the sideboard cards people are playing is Aether Gust and Declaration of Stone. Declaration of Stone, just being unconditional removal for 2 mana, is sometimes very, very strong, you know, against these creature decks. It's also like obscene against like Boros Convoke. You know, they do their goblin thing and then you just get rid of the goblins. It's really funny. And then Aether Gust, very good against the enchantment deck, the Enigmatic Fires deck, I mean, very good against green, obviously very good against hidden strings and stuff like that. So really, out of these 17 cards, you pick 15 of them. Like, you take 2 out. I've already talked about all these other sideboard cards, and I'd love to provide guidance on what is correct, but it's actually really tough. I think Declaration of Stone and Aether Gust are the only 2 cards that don't really fit for me. But if you're worried about these creature decks, or you're worried about, like, Lotus and green, which you shouldn't be worried about green, to be totally honest, is their best matchup, or you're expecting a lot of it, you know, I could see playing Aether Gust on the board. Another kind of notable thing is generally they don't play 4 Invasion of Gobakhan. If you choose Invasion of Gobakhan for your main deck slots, then your sideboard's pretty set. You just take out these 2 invasions, and this is your board now as far as stock goes. And again, this is just what stock is. I'm not like necessarily promoting this. This is just, I'm trying to explain the deck, that it just is figured out right now. You are totally welcome to play whatever you want. This is just what the hive mind is deciding to play. You know, it's important to understand that there is 1 stock build minus 4 cards. There's literally 71 cards that everybody is playing. And if you go off of that 71, that's on you. So let's move on to sideboarding with this deck. We're going to learn to sideboard with the deck that I'm presenting right now. I'm not going to talk about all the flex slots and all the possibilities and stuff like that. You can use your intuition for that. But if you want to use this 75, which is basically stock, then here is effectively a sideboard guide. Now, what's important to understand is that this deck is a pretty well-oiled machine, so we want to be careful about sideboarding too much. But the most popular deck in Pioneer is Nykthos Ramp, which is already a pretty wonderful matchup. We're bringing in Skyclave Apparition because it deals with everything except for their total payoffs, like literally Cavalier and Cityscape Leveler. Bringing in Portable Hole because it can attack their mana. And Destroy Evil because even though there's death triggers in this deck, like getting stuff out of the way and jamming is often very, very good. Now we're going to be siding out of stuff that really doesn't matter. Like Catilda, sizing doesn't matter because things just need to be out of the way and we're trying to go wide anyway. Slip Out the Back doesn't really matter because there's not really removal in our opponent's deck. For the same reason, Rattle Change doesn't really matter. We love everything else. In fact, Shacklegeist is like one of the best cards in the matchup. But this is how I sideboard against Mono Green. The second most popular deck is Rakdos Sack. Against Rakdos Sack, they're really good at answering our stuff, so we like bringing in Wedding Announcement, and Takasi is welcome. Sizing can really matter against Rakdos Sack because they're trying to like ping down your homies very often, so I like Catilda. And I'm a big fan of Portable Hole. I think this one's a little questionable. I think it's fine to not side in Portable Hole, but I like sided in Portable Hole to be able to stop the Witch's Cauldron stuff, being able to take out a Fable token, stuff like that. That being said, Shacklegeist is real bad in this matchup. It just does nothing. They have too much removal for Curious Obsession to be good, so I like siding that out as well. And for similar reasons, I like shaving on Spell Queller. Now, if you don't like Portable Hole, I think it's fine to just like keep these in, you know. But this is how I board Rakdos Sacrifice. The third most popular deck in Pioneer is the Mirror Match, another Spirits deck. We're siding Portable Hole, and we side in our Skyclave Apparition for a removal. And I'm a fan of Catilda just to like help race. Now we're going to cut Slip Out the Back because it's not a lot of targeted removal besides like what they're bringing in from their board. And I'm okay with like not playing like around 6 of them or whatever. That's not what Slip Out the Back's for. I'm not a fan of Shacklegeist because it's only really good against the opposing Catildas, which there's a lot of 75s that are playing 0. And we're going to shave 1 Rattle Chains again because there's not a lot of removal in our opponent's boards besides exactly what's coming in from the sideboard. So keeping 3 Rattle Chains in to foil like one of these is pretty solid, and plus the counter magic I think is good enough. So this size sideboard against Azorius Spirits. The 4th most popular deck in Pioneer is Humans. Against Humans, again, we are bringing in that removal, including Destroy Evil, because it can take out Adeline and it can take out Ossification, which is both very, very good, and Catilda for the races. Now, this Humans deck has a ridiculous amount of removal post board between the Brutal Cathars, the Ossifications, and the Portable Holes, so I actually like keeping, that stuff in. However, I think we shave on Lofty Denial. We really need to apply pressure before they do their thing. Also, if they keep Thalia in, things like Lofty Denial can be really, really rough. And I'm generally a fan of shaving on our 1-drops. Specifically, I'm not a fan of Mausoleum Wanderer, and if we're cutting a lot of 1-drops, I think it's fine to cut a Curious Obsession in this high sideboard against Humans. The 5th most popular deck in Pioneer is Blue-White Control. Against Blue-White Control, we got to expect the game to go long. We're bringing in Invasion of Agobakon for board wipes, Takasia's Welcome and Wedding Announcement to help with the grindy stuff. And then there's no racing going on, so like we're bringing out Catilda, and Shacklegeist does effectively nothing. And there's very little actual true spot removal, so we're bringing out Slip Out the Back. Rattle Change is good because of the flash stuff, though, so we're keeping that in. So size sideboard against Blue Control. And the 6th most popular deck in Pioneer is Lotus Field, the Hidden Strings deck. Against this deck, we're bringing in Invasion because it interrupts the combo, and that is pretty much it. Our deck is going to be taking out the Slip Out the Backs because like we don't need protection. They don't really run removal. And the size sideboard against Hidden Strings. The 7th most popular deck is Rakdos Midrange. Against Rakdos Midrange, we are bringing in our long game plan and bringing in Catilda. Catilda is good against Blood Tithe Harvester, and sizing can kind of matter. You can kind of do it out of nowhere, being able to put the Disturbed Catilda onto the battlefield. That being said, Shacklegeist is real bad, does not do anything for the most part. We're going to shave 1 Curious Obsession because Curious Obsession sometimes isn't very good if we're unable to protect it. And then we are going to shave 1 Spell Queller because Spell Queller can be not really good against the million removal spell deck. So size sideboard against Red Black Midrange. The 8th most popular deck in Pioneer is Abzan Greasefang against Abzan Greasefang. We don't have a lot of the sideboard. I actually don't like sideboarding anything. I think there's a argument for Invasion over like Curious Possession or something, but I really like my main deck against Abzan Greasefang. We have a million things in our deck to interrupt their combo. I don't sideboard against Greasefang. The 9th most popular deck is Creativity. The combo version is coming back. Against Combo Creativity, we're bringing in Invasion, and we're going to be bringing out Catilda and a single Spectral Sailor. They're like a pseudo-control deck. They kind of go all in on their combo, and we have a million ways to interrupt their combo. We bring in more ways to interrupt their combo and just stick to our primary game plan. The 10th most popular deck in Pioneer is Mono Red Aggro. Against Mono Red, we are bringing in Portable Hole. Hi, Katie. And we're going to be bringing in Catilda for the lifelink. We're going to be bringing out Shacklegeist. They are normally really low to the ground, and Shacklegeist is good against like individual, like really tall creatures. And we're going to be cutting a single Lofty Denial. It can get kind of clunky being 2 mana all the time. This can be 1 mana, and it's much easier to just go card for card with them. So this is how I sideboard against Mono Red. The 11th most popular deck is Gruul Vehicles. Against Gruul Vehicles, I'm not a huge fan of Portable Hole. It's good against Werewolf Pack Leader and the Mana Dorks, but it doesn't hit anything else, so that's not where I want to be. However, Skyclave is super good, and I love the sizing that Catilda gives. And Destroy Evil only gets rid of the vehicles, so I'm not feeling good about that card either. That being said, I think it's okay to shave some Slip Out the Backs just because they're only bringing in a few sideboard removal cards, and there's not a lot of removal in their deck. They're mostly just like creature and jam style deck. And we're going to shave a Mausoleum Wanderer because they don't run a lot of instants and sorceries, mostly just coming out of the board. So size sideboard against vehicles. Next one's Is It Phoenix? Against Phoenix, I want to tempo them out. If the game goes long, then things are going kind of weird for us. However, I do like Catilda. Being able to kind of race their Phoenix is kind of silly and sweet. And I think there's an argument for Wedding Announcement and Katasia's Welcome. I'm not a fan. I think I'd rather just not board and try to pair up properly with them. I'm going to shave a Shacklegeist for Catilda and just leave it as is. So those are all the decks that I think are like really playable in Pioneer at the moment. You'll definitely play against some other decks, but those are the decks you're going to play against most rounds. And with how to sideboard against those decks, that brings my deep dive to an end. I hope you like this analysis of the deck, analysis of flex slots, sideboard guide, how to play the deck, and all of that stuff. If you did, I would really appreciate you to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.